Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Porque o Mundo Precisa de Água, because the world needs water. And I am Everton de Oliveira, Professor Água from the Instituto Aqua Sustentavel. And today I have the privilege of speaking with Ryan Hreljac, the founder of Ryan's Well Foundation. If you never heard of it, please take a look. We'll have the links down there and you take a look. It's an impressive story. Ryan's journey is one of the most inspiring stories in the global water movement. What began as a determination of a 6-year-old boy to build a well in Africa has grown into a foundation that has transformed lives in communities around the world. I had the honor of bringing Ryan to Brazil some years ago, more than 10 years ago. Time flies, where he was warmly received at the Brazilian Groundwater Congress. Today, we will revisit his remarkable story and discuss how the challenges of water access are evolving in today's world. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you. Nice to see you again. It's been a long while since we brought you to Brazil. That was very good. Your visit was very nice, and it was a success. Actually, your story is very nice. And guys, I have here Ryan Hreljac, and he has a very interesting story. His story ended up being his work for life, which is quite unusual.
So
And
far.
yes, so far. Well, I hope it keep on going because it's such a noble activity. So tell us, our audience, most of our audience probably have not heard of you before, right? We have some that saw your presentation at the Congress when I brought you here, I don't know, more than 10 years ago,
More
right?
than 10 years ago, more than
So
a decade now. Yeah.
yes, exactly. We're getting older soon, too quickly, too quickly. Okay, so let me know. Tell them your story to the people. I know you told your story to so many people, but again, tell your story again. How you started when you were 6 year old. That was
Mhm.
your start. That was quite moving story. So tell us, please, and welcome to our show.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm 34 years old now, so I'm really getting up there. And back 28 years ago when I was six, I got involved in water in my grade one class. It was a school project, and we were talking about, different people in the world and how they lived and different specific items we could fundraise for. And we were going through we would try to achieve. And it was things like food and medicine and all these different things you do with your penny school fundraisers. And at the end of the list was a well. And my teacher tried to explain to us that there were kids our age who couldn't go to school because their job was to go get water for their families all day, which was really strange to us. Like we had a hard time understanding because, when you want water, you go to the sink, you go to the water fountain. So my teacher had a tough time trying to explain to us that that doesn't work for everyone, and some kids have to walk really far to go get water. And one of the things that we got hung up on was how far kids actually had to walk. And on the sheet my teacher had, it said sometimes as far as 5 kilometers. That didn't make sense to us because we were 6 and 7 years old. So my teacher, she tried to explain it and she said, that's about 5,000 steps, which also did not help because I could not count that high. I was still 6 years old. I was very young. But I counted the steps it took me to get from my classroom door to the water fountain. And I counted 10. And, I was just a kid, but, one thing that we're taught as kids is the idea of sharing and that, the classroom especially was a fair place. So to hear that that wasn't the case, I don't know, it irked something in me to get involved. So I raised my hand. I volunteered to do that part of the project and ended up failing many times, but kind of stuck with it. And it ended up doing lots of work. It ended up eventually fundraising enough money for a well, and then many more after, creating an organization called the Ryan's Well Foundation. And now we've been around for over 20 years, and we've been able to do over 1,600 water projects in 17 countries all around the world. That's helped 1.6 million people get access to clean water. And I'm sure a lot of people reading this are very engaged and intuitive of water issues, that it's not a simple thing. But back when I was six, I wanted to make sure that more kids were able to go to school and have access to clean water. And that kind of attitude was infectious, and it brought people within us that were able to help grow the project to the point where we're still around today doing our work.
Oh, that's quite interesting. Where and how was your first well installed, and how did you manage to get the money for that first well? Because it's it's a lot of money for for a
It
kid.
was a lot of money. I was told it was 70 Canadian dollars would buy a well, which isn't that much money. It would have been 1998. So I guess it was a little bit more back then. But I started by doing chores around my house. I did things like I already had to do things like make my bed and help out clean around the house. Now I was told I had to vacuum, wash windows, shovel snow. Then I got a little bit of allowance money and I put it in this big jar and I saved it for a well and I brought it in. It took me so long to fundraise the money that my school fundraiser had ended. So I brought it, I ended up going way past my deadline, but then my mom found an organization that did that kind of thing I'm from Canada and there's a city where I'm near called Ottawa. So I brought it into Ottawa to this organization that did that kind of thing. They built wells all over the world. And they kind of humored me when I came in with all my like pocket change. They said like, "Oh, that's so cute." And they were really nice and they explained what they did. But they said to me, like, Ryan, this is great. This will help, but it's not going to build a well. This is just going to buy the hand pump that goes on top of the well to actually drill down into the ground, to put in the piping, to pay the people, get all the equipment together. It's going to cost at least 2,000 Canadian dollars. And I was told 70, so that was a lot more. And it took me 4 months to raise $70. So I remember we got home that night. I told them that I would just go home and do more chores and come back once I had the $2,000. And I remember we got home that night and my mom said to my dad, like, yeah, it's not over. He's trying to raise $2,000 now. And my dad was just kind of like, oh my gosh, like face palmed. Like he was, I looked up to my dad a lot when I was a kid. He was a police officer for the city and he used to volunteer basketball, coach the high school team in my town. And he wasn't an expert in water issues, but he knew that, his kid raising pocket change wasn't gonna bring water to people. So I had a chat with him. He said, Ryan, you did a great job. You showed tenacity and perseverance and you followed through on your commitment. Feel proud of what you've done, but it's okay to stop. My dad wasn't trying to be mean or put me down or anything, but he knew that the world's a complicated place and that you can't solve them with vacuum in the house. And I kind of understand where he's coming from now that I'm an adult because I see even now I know infinitely more about the world's water problems and knowing that there's, 1 billion people that don't have access to clean water. It's a matter of sustainability, getting the work to where it needs to go, the proper work. It's complicated. But
Very.
back then it was simple. Like I thought that that one well would make all the difference in the world. So ended up keep on going. I did Pokemon card raffles at my school and basketball tournaments. I did little fundraisers around my town. And I think people saw what I was doing and they kind of said like, okay, if Ryan is doing something, like maybe there's something I can do. And that was infectious. And it got people around my town and then the country and then all the world involved with Ryan's well. And that first well went to a country called Uganda at Angola Primary School, and they got the first clean water source they had ever had.
That's such a story, such a story. And but not only that, because you got infectious because at the time, you were like such a small kid with a noble intention. That draws the attention for sure, right?
I
Uh,
think my classmates, especially, I wasn't really the smartest kid in my class. I was just kind of there. And I think people saw that and were inspired by it because I used to think that when I was a kid that you had to be someone really special to make a difference. You had to be really kind or wealthy or smart. But at the end of the day, I found that, especially as I grew up and I was involved in a lot of different causes over the years, the people that have the greatest impact are just people who want to give back to the things that they care about and have an impact. And sometimes
Teamwork.
if you engage more people to think like that, you end up having a way better impact than your couple like crazy selfless people. So that's what we've tried to do. Yeah.
You are correct. You are
Mm.
definitely right on that.
Hmm.
That's a very important message. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you expect yourself to be special, it'll never happen, right?
No.
That's
Not in a
true.
million years. Yeah. Mhm.
That's true. So that's nice. So how do you end up going to Uganda? I've seen the videos on that.
Yeah.
I'll put the link for people that are watching us to take a look.
Yeah.
And that was quite an occasion when you arrived there, right? How that
Yeah.
happened?
I was lucky a few years after I'd finally fundraised the money for the initial well. My neighbors who I had done chores for, trying to raise money for, they used to travel a lot for a living. So they gave a donation one Christmas of air mile points. So me and my parents were actually able to go and see the well, the school there had heard that it was a kid who had fundraised the money for the well, and they were really curious because in Uganda in that culture, like when you're a student, when you're a kid, like you're a kid, you're a student, like you listen to your teacher, you wait till you're an adult to make a member, to like make a difference in the community or be a member of it. But when they heard that
Anywhere
it
is
was a
like
kid,
that. Anywhere is like that.
exactly. Maybe it's just anywhere. That's a fair point. But they've been asking for a water source for, a decade from the government, from aid organizations and petitioning for it, and they just weren't able to secure it. And then when they heard that they were finally getting it and it was because of a fundraiser from a kid, they took that as a message to their own students that they did not have to wait to become, members of the community. So they really liked the story and they called it Ryan's Well because of that, and they wanted me to officially open it, which led to me going a few years later. And it was pretty crazy. I would have been 9, and there was a big, huge celebration at the school. There were over 5,000 people there from the local community. There's a feast and a festival, and everyone was just so, over the moon happy because they had clean water. And still, like, I don't have a smile that lights up on my face because I can have a shower or a glass of water. So to see something that I considered so negligible and small to have, that much of an impact on someone's life, it gave me motivation to keep on going. So I came back to Canada. I started talking to anyone who would listen to me. I gave hundreds of presentations in a year. And then it was in the newspaper. There was the documentary that came out about that very first trip. They called it Ryan's Well. It was on the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Yeah,
And
you even Oprah
yeah.
Winfrey. Yes, that's amazing. I see. It's nice to
Yeah.
see yourself. How do you feel when you see yourself, a young boy, walking into the show like that? Oh,
Oh my gosh.
you didn't even know the
Uh,
size of the thing when you're so young, right?
I was painfully shy when I was a kid, but I remember I had a conversation with my mom. She's like, if you really want to try to grow this project and try to help more people, the best way to do that is to involve other people in it and to speak to them and share what you're feeling. So I think it was a little bit painful just in that respect, but
I
at the same
imagine.
time, it got so many people involved and now lifelong friends and supporters who are engaged with the work with us. So I'm glad I was able to overcome that hurdle. Yeah.
That's interesting. I think about myself. I was so shy when I was a boy.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, that would be terrible
Maybe it's a universal thing. Yeah, it's just
Yes, I
comfort
guess
zone.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So well, just a curiosity, is the well still working there, the Ryan well?
Yeah, the well is still working. It's really cool, actually. This last monitoring and evaluation trip, we still do work in an area that's not too far away from that original well. And my grade 1 teacher, who her name is Nancy Prest, who helped inspire the project, has since retired. But then she was able to join the board of directors for Ryan's Well,
Oh, that's
and
very
she
nice. That's very
and
nice.
I was able to finally get her to go on a monitoring and evaluation trip,
Oh,
and we were able
really?
to do a visit back to the original Ryan's
Oh
Well. So we
boy,
did a small little video of it on our YouTube
that's a
channel,
nice story in itself.
and
That's very
Nancy was
nice.
able to go. She's 70 now, so but she was able to go and meet the community and see the people because that was what the other person, the school was very interested in the teacher. Like, how do you get a lifelong commitment out of a student who's 6? Like, I can't get them to sit down. So it
Well,
was.
I bet she doesn't know, right?
She takes no credit for doing anything, but it was her, it's really easy to write off people who are, especially who are kids, who are asking silly questions, but she took the time to try to explain to us exactly what the problem was, even though that
Exactly.
she didn't understand it completely herself. And by her taking the time to do that, it ended up, creating interest and, led to everything that did happen. So a lot of the credit goes to her for everything that's happened.
That's very good. That's very, very nice. But then, looking back, you see differences between the world when you started back there and when you started your foundation, Ryan Well Foundation, and today, especially now
Abs-
that everybody talks about climate
mm,
change, population, growth is, exploding
mm.
and more stress on water. So, do you see differences from there and now and then?
Yeah, there's definitely new challenges. Like you mentioned, climate change, population growth, especially in specific areas, are really straining, water systems, and we need to find different solutions. There's other things that have been really positive over the years, like when we've done our work, like we've worked all over the world, but our work in northern Uganda, for instance, it's an area that's gone through a lot of transition. Like I remember when my first trip there when I was 9 would have been pre 2000. Since then the area has gone through a civil war and,
Oh,
so much
yes.
change and different things. And it used to be so challenging. Like the waterborne illness was, prevalent where guinea worm was like, abundant, and like the clinics were inundated with people with, diarrhea, cholera, typhoid, just like daily. Now it's actually changed in a positive way in a lot of areas. That's not to say that there's still not a lot of work to be done, especially in a lot of rural areas that are outside the reach. But there's opportunity for people. There's a lot more business. The cities, like if you go to Kampala versus like the city in Uganda when I was a kid versus now, like it's night and day with opportunity for people who are able to, start jobs and get careers and build for their families. Like it's a lot of cool development is happening in specific places. Like, and you
Good.
could look at, other examples. Like when you look at the issues in the Sudan, we used to do work in Burkina Faso, and we're not able to right now because of the conflict happening there. There's
Exactly.
definitely
The
not,
problem there, yeah.
it's not rainbows and sunshines everywhere, but there is a lot of positive developments happening that's leading towards more sustainable development, controlled population growth where people are able to better manage the size of their families and get education for their kids so that they can have careers and live healthier, fuller lives. So I think there's a lot of positive development that is happening that, we've lucky to been a part of a small sliver of it, but I think it's a lot more than we think.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
very good. That's very good, especially with the numbers that you presented right at the
Yeah.
start there. It's quite impressive and very good. So as I mentioned to you, we started our project here. And we were focused on communication, right? Because
Mm.
communicating the importance of water, how to deal with water, that was our first start. And today we bring in water, we have something not in the size of you're doing and not with the experience that you have, but we're doing installing wells and treating water for some rural communities or very far small
Mm.
communities in the Amazon, for example, right? So for us, from my experience, communication with the community is one of the most important aspects. It's very difficult. We first need to gain the trust of residents in vulnerable communities and then engage them so they can continue the actions after we complete our part. And I remember clearly when you mentioned that to us
Yes.
at the beginning, we went, I think, into a bar and you're telling your stories
Mm.
right there. And how do you do this in your work? Could you share a story or experience
Yeah.
that surprised
No,
you and that
it
taught you something unexpected or showed firsthand how good communication and access to clean water can be transformative?
it's incredibly important. I remember when I first started fundraising back in the 90s, there was this crazy statistic where they figured 80% of wells drilled by non-for-profits and governments in, in developing countries, 80% of them didn't work within a year because a lot of projects were done with this idea of, okay, do all the work and the rest will sort itself out, which doesn't work for water solutions because, a vast majority of them need to be, maintained and taken care of and sustained. And, when we do our work now, we do a year of preparation before we even start doing the construction work. Engage the local community. It has to be a community that wants that water source and is willing to take responsibility for certain things. I think one thing that we talk about at the United Nations level is like, water is a right, which, I'm all for, but
Yeah,
I like to combine that with water as a responsibility. So
yes,
when we do a
agree.
project, we want to make sure we're doing it with the idea that it lasts a lifetime for people. So that it involves making the community responsible and own the water project. So it doesn't belong, if we do a project, it doesn't belong to Ryan's Well or to the government. It belongs to that community. And that involves engaging them to make bylaws and how the water is operated, responsibilities, plans if, certain people leave their positions, what to do. And if you cover those bases, we found that we've had a lot more success, especially in rural areas that, don't have a lot of development and education with people who are able to sustain their water sources. That's not to say that it's perfect, but there's still so much that you can do. And I think it's just in terms of making sure that it goes to the right kind of people who, really want a water source for their community and that they have the tools to take care of it. And if you can set people up like that, I think people see the value of having water in their own communities and, the rest, is really, it can take care of itself in a positive way.
Oh, that's interesting. And
Yeah.
do you have stats on your success? You know, the wells that are installed, are they running on most of them? Or,
Yeah, we do annual monitoring and evaluation, and we have a look back campaign where we look back 5, 10, and then 15 years later at 80% of our projects to see what's working well, what needs improved. And we've had a really high success rate where we've been able to see our projects work for, lifetimes afterwards. I think we're lucky we've been around for so long now, but we've been able to, encompass certain areas and really get good coverage. Yeah, so.
no,
We're
that's
happy about that because, like I mentioned earlier, that was not the norm back at the turn of the millennia. Mhm.
oh, that's interesting. But then you started when you started putting your wells. How did you develop this thinking of maintenance? Because it's something you
Yeah.
learn along the way, right?
Mm.
Or you had it
Yeah, it was something
from the
that we
beginning.
noticed on that very first trip that I took to Uganda. And you saw certain wells that weren't being used. And so you asked a
Okay,
simple question, why aren't they being used? Oh, well, that was done. That's a government well. And it was done, it was just plopped down. Like they came and they put it down
and
and
go.
then that was that. And
Yeah,
then people used it for as long as it worked and then it didn't. So now it's not working anymore. And you hear stories like that. And there's different, contractors that, okay, we need to do 3 deep wells in this sub county. So they'll come, they'll use the main road, they'll do 3 deep wells, bam, 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 almost right next to each other and say, okay, we've fulfilled our requirement because it's challenging to work in a lot of these rural areas. They're, tough roads to get into, engage in the local
definitely.
community, making sure you're putting it in a place, speaking with a water expert, you can't just build a well anywhere. It has to be the right place, and then you have
Yep,
to make sure it's on someone's land who's willing to share it with the local community, and all these different other things. It's things
exactly.
that aren't easily done from just like a let's go get it done now level. You have to slow down and make sure that you're doing things properly, or else you're not going to have an impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know you're
Yeah.
telling, but I'm thinking about that because we've been through exactly the same experience. You know,
Yeah.
guys,
Mhm.
they want a well, but they don't even know. Well, they have no idea about hydrogeology or where to put the well and how to maintain and how to distribute the
Mhm.
water and how to legalize the well because you know, you have to put in someone's area, right?
Yes, it's important to get that all straightened out beforehand because if you're doing that
Exactly.
afterwards, it creates even more issue and conflict, which you don't want to be a part
Exactly.
of. So you have to really slow it down and take your time and make sure you're doing things properly. Yeah.
Exactly. Agree.
Mhm.
Very good. Very good. So, what are the most important personal lessons you've learned along the way? And how working across cultures and communities shape the way you see the world today?
Yeah,
Personal
it's
question.
I think when I was a kid, I used to think that the world was a very different place. Like we were hearing in my grade one class about how kids didn't have clean water. I'm like, oh, that must be so different. And then when I went when I was 9, I was lucky because I was able to go to school for a couple weeks with the kids there and attend class, which I was really nervous about because I was already painfully shy and it's like the other side of the world. You're just going to school with the kids. And then I went and, you went to class, you played soccer at lunch and, bought roasted corn from the guy on the side of the street with your new friends. And I don't know, it just, by the end of the trip, I couldn't really tell the friends that I had made there in Uganda back from my friends home in Canada. They were kids who wanted to go to school and have fun. And I think it's really cool, especially with our work as I've grown up with it, to see that we're a whole lot more similar at the end of the day than we think,
Oh,
even on the
yes.
other side of the world. So that was a really cool thing for me to learn, just with my development that, I don't think there's as many differences as that we would like to believe. And if we can improve one community in the world, I'd like to think it improves us all. So I think that's kind of how I looked at it. And the other thing
It's
that
very
I think
nice.
we've touched on a little bit is that you don't have to be someone really amazing to make a difference in the world. I remember when I was a kid, I went on a Canadian radio show and they were doing a special segment where they were interviewing like activists of different generations. So they interviewed someone who was 0 to 9, then someone in their teens, 20s, 30s, all the way up to someone in their 90s who would act, spent their life volunteering for a cause. And I would have gone on the show. I was the 9-year old. And they interviewed us all, asked us questions about why we did what we did and what motivated us, which was all good. And then at the end, they found out something very interesting. With the exception of myself and the teenager, every other activist that they interviewed at some point in their life had gone through a mental breakdown. were so invested in what they were trying to do and the issue that they're trying to fix in the world that they couldn't sustain a healthy life anymore. And they had to step away from it. They had to stop entirely. All
Wow.
sorts of different things. And so I think one important thing is it's important to care about yourself. There's a lot of issues in the world, especially with water, and it can be overwhelming sometimes.
Exactly. We're not
Take
going to
care of,
solve the world's problem at once. You're going to help. That's it. Right?
yes, my dream when I was a kid was I want clean water for everyone in the world. And that can be overwhelming and it can
Definitely.
you can be defeatist about it sometimes. So it's important to take time if you have a big goal or big dreams, take care of yourself, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And I think that's the most important thing for me to realize. I always like the quote, it's better to live humbly for a cause than die nobly for one. And I think, there's everyday ordinary people who want to be involved with so many different issues in the world, but, get burnt out. So I think it's just
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
know your know what your limits are and to be involved in a thing that you care about, I think can be something that we can do for a lifetime for a lot of people. And I think that's just important to know that everyone's different and to find our balances and stuff like that.
Very good. Very good. So,
Yeah.
do you believe the young people today can still spark similar change that you've done? And what advice would you give to children or students who want to take action for water and sustainability?
I think sometimes it can only come from kids. If I knew everything that I knew now, I would have never started this project as a kid. I would have
That's a good
been
point. That's a
overwhelmed.
great point.
But it was that different perspective and energy. I wasn't the smartest or wealthiest or whatever it was, but I had a different perspective that, led, experts in the area to say, oh, well, maybe we should try that and, try to fundraise and do more work here. And, oh, maybe we try it like this. And it ended up making a big difference. So I think my advice to youth, especially, is when you are engaged or find something you care about, don't be afraid to ask questions, get involved, and know that you don't have to be an expert from the get-go, that it could still become a huge part of your life and better yet, maybe even help someone else's life. So I think it's just important to know that uh, being naive and youth and all those things aren't a detriment. They can be an advantage to getting involved in something and seeing something differently.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. And
Yeah.
it's good because you've been through it, right? You have that.
A little bit. I wouldn't call myself, I'm not a water hydrologist by any stretch of the imagination, but I've definitely seen, you know, uh, different ways to go about things and how to have a positive impact. And I'm glad to know what I know now and to have done what I did when I was a kid. I wouldn't write it any other way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're saying that, but this is not only a kid because we have, for example, I try to talk to some people that are trying to work with water and do something with water, and sometimes they're not related to they don't have an education, a formal education in water, right?
Mm,
And it is good to see that. And I try to interview some people that they like water, but
mm.
they're not hydrologists, hydrogeologists, or anything like that.
But it's a different perspective. No, I hear you.
It is
Yeah.
good because
Yeah.
exactly because it
Mm,
stretches the envelope, because they have ideas that you would not think of it because it would, the science says no for you. And then you go
mm,
there and check and it works, which is quite interesting. It's the same, it's not exactly the same level as being a kid because you're talking about naiveness, but the other is a kind of naiveness because you don't know exactly the science, but you see that something is wrong and should be correct and you look away for ways of solving that. That's very nice. That's very nice.
mm,
I agree with you, and I try to look for people that have these different uh, let's say perspectives for the same problem. It's interesting. So I told you before, we have this Instituto Água Sustentavel, Sustainable Water Institute here in Brazil, and we're carrying a project in the Amazon regions. Porto Velho is the name of it's the capital of one state there, Rondônia.
mm,
And we're talking to vulnerable communities. And I always, when we started this project, I was thinking about you because your stories is always coming back. How you work with people, not exactly your children's story because it's moving, but the way you work, because I remember well the way we were telling what was the difficulties on the maintenance and things. So we started our work thinking on a track that that you showed me before, right? So that's why I wanted to interview you here. And this communities, as I mentioned to you, amazingly, when you think about the Amazon, it's a flooded big part of the year, right?
Mm,
So we never think about people having problems with lack of water, right? Which is a big problem for them, right?
mm,
And then, and again, they have to walk a long distance, so they have to take, boat if they want to go to somewhere. And if you see the region during the flooding season, it's hard to imagine that those are the ones that are nice on pictures. So when we see Amazon, you only see the flooding season, because all the water around, right?
mm.
And so do you see possibilities like opportunities for collaboration between your foundation and our institute so we can like work together to expand the clean water access and our awareness, for people?
Absolutely. We advocate for water for everyone in this world and happy to look at different pilot projects and to explore how to do that best with people. And even if it's sharing practices on how best to do it. And, there's no silver bullet, as I think you
Yeah.
know, like what works in one area may not work in another, but it's good to have an open mind and try as much as we can to help people all over the world get access to clean water.
Have you ever worked in Brazil at all or not?
No, we've worked in Guyana and Guatemala with Rotary. We've worked in Mexico. We've worked in Haiti, but we've never done a project in Brazil. Yeah.
Oh, let's
So there
see
you go.
if we can bring you down here. It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
All right.
Okay, so as you look to the future, because you've been doing that for so long, what's your vision for Ryan's Well Foundation, and what's the message you'd like to leave for people listening to your story? And the power of one person's action, as you mentioned, and how can it ripple out to change the world, please?
With Ryan's Well, we're working hard. We are trying to do over 50 water projects this year with our partners in Uganda and Ghana. And we work hard to fundraise the money, make sure that the work's done correct, and do our best. So that's our goal for this year. And we're coming up on probably midway through our project work right now. So trying to finish strong and to try our best to keep on making a difference in the world. I don't know if Ryan's Well or I'm going to be involved with water issues for all my life. I feel like I'm still somewhat young, but maybe not now anymore. But
Right.
yeah, I've been
That'll be
such
a big loss. Don't say that.
well, it's been such a treasure to be amazing to be a part of this for as long as I have, and happy to keep on trying for long as I can. Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Quite interesting. So, please leave your final message to our listeners, please.
My final message would be you're never too young and you're never too old to make a difference. And let's work together to bring the world clean water.
Thank you, Ryan. It was very nice to having you with us again, and I'm looking forward to work with you, bring you here in Brazil. I will be in touch
All
with
right,
you.
fair enough.
And
I'll
when
keep
I
an eye
come
out.
up to Canada, I'll give you
Give me a ring if you come up to Canada and looking forward to coming back
I
down to
know, so
Brazil if that's
I
possible.
was last year in Canada in Ottawa, and I should have
That's where I am. You gotta send me a
exactly
note.
exactly
I
you're
live
right
in
there.
Ottawa now, so
I
yeah.
went to Ottawa. It was like a two
And no
days.
one comes to Ottawa, so there you go. So now you know someone who lives there.
Exactly.
I shouldn't say that.
And I
There's
can
some
tell you,
people
I
there.
lived so long in Canada. That was my first time in Ottawa.
Yeah, and like Hamilton, Toronto, I would assume that when I usually talk to people from Brazil, they're like, "Oh, Toronto, Hamilton, that area." So that's nice
Oh,
you're coming to Ottawa.
I live nearby Toronto. I live near Waterloo. That's why I.
Yes, yes.
So,
And I just thought that Waterloo was in Hamilton, so there you go. My Canadian geography, Ontario geography. I should be
oh,
ashamed of
it's very
myself.
close. It's very close. Didn't miss by much, no. And actually, I went there to watch the eclipse.
Oh, go figure.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, well, I went there because I have lots of friends in Canada. So I had the opportunity to see the
Oh,
eclipse.
nice.
So I put things together and I went there. That was very nice. That was
That's
very nice.
awesome.
Let me show you one thing here. Let me show you one thing here. Just a moment.
All right.
Okay, because I got, well, now that I won't find this thing. Just a moment. Oh, look at this. Look at this. You might have seen this in Canada. Look at that.
Oh, you kept the glasses.
Yeah, okay,
And you
exactly.
have them handy just in case.
Exactly. I kept
Oh
the
my
glass.
God. That's so funny.
No, I
That's
have it here
hilarious.
because I like it. I like astronomy as well.
Fair
So,
enough. You never know when it's gonna happen
and
again.
that thing, there was a boy from a religious church who gave me that. Like he was like 80 years old. Very nice. We kept talking
Go
while we were
figure.
making
That's hilarious.
the clips. It was very nice.
Oh my God,
In
that's
the
funny.
field there. It was nearby Hamilton that I stayed. That was very nice.
Fair
Very
enough.
nice. Good. So thank you very much, Brian. Nice talk to you again. Thank you for showing up in our show here. Thank you.
It's a
Bye.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Bye. Bye.